he saw already in the late 50s. He talked about the fact that we cannot lose hope, because if we do, we really surrender to the forces of fear, cynicism, prejudice, hate, hostility, injustice. And I can tell you that the reality is we do often feel that diminishing hope just because our work is hard. But I'll tell you that one of the things that I have seen and that gives me tremendous hope is looking to the next generation. And not just the younger generation, but just the many people who have never stood up, never protested before, and are out there on the streets fighting racial injustice. I want to also say that the other thing that compels me to have hope is the fact that we have so many people who have given their lives for human rights. You can think of course, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, Trayvon Martin, Heather Heyer, Reverend Clementa Pinckney. You can think of Joseph Aleto, Vincent Chin, the dozens killed at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Americans of Latino ancestry shot dead in El Paso, Asian Americans murdered in Atlanta, Jewish brothers and sisters who lost their lives at Squirrel Hill, Pennsylvania, the Tree of Life Temple, fellow Americans of the Sikh faith who were murdered in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. All of these people lost their lives because of hatred, prejudice, intolerance, white supremacy. We won't let those lives be lost in vain. And that certainly is a reason that we must hope. But there's also the reality that a little more than a year ago, it's important to remember that Donald Trump was seeking re-election, and we weren't sure about the outcome of that election. Just a year ago, vaccines were just a hope. They were still in development. We had 0 vaccines available for the overall population. And that, using a resurgence of COVID, we should remind us that there is a reason to hope. Should give you a shot of hope, so to speak. Now, I can't ignore the fact that today is December 7th, which is Pearl Harbor Day, something that's been, you've certainly heard about in the news. And it has enormous meaning for me, not just for the reasons that most people feel that it was a day of infamy that will forever live in history, but it was also a day that led to the imprisonment of my family, my mother, my uncles, my aunts, my grandparents, solely because of their Japanese ancestry. And that trauma was revived again by the attacks on September 11th, which at that time was talked about as the only other time since Pearl Harbor that there was an attack on US soil by an enemy. That too led to a widespread wave of hate, the highest number of hate crimes that we have seen targeting Muslims and Middle Easterners. But these are just reminders of the fact that in our history, not just as a nation, but as a global community, that communities have faced oppression throughout their histories. They've been denied their basic human rights. And I think that is the reason why we picked this week to hold this gathering. International Human Rights Day is December 10th. And that too is a reason for hope. That is a day that commemorates the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That is the first time that our human society has agreed upon a standard of rights to which every human being is accorded. It is inalienable. It cannot be separated from our humanity. And we, as leaders in government, we have the power of government and the responsibility of government to serve all of us, but especially those who are vulnerable, especially those who are being targeted, especially those who live in fear, who live in discrimination, who live without access to the basics. And we especially need to be there when fear and hysteria are at their greatest. So really crafting a new human rights agenda, the theme of this conference, is not so much an act of hope, but really of necessity. We have to respond to acts of hate and hostility and discrimination whenever they occur. We have to use the power of government to fight systemic racism and inequity. We have to protect our most vulnerable and build vibrant, thriving communities, free of prejudice and inequity, as our department often says. We really have to lift up the rights of people who have so long suffered in just being who they are. We have to build an anti-hate, a human rights infrastructure, which we're trying to do here in LA. And we also have to address this system-wide in our government. And we have another powerful initiative in LA County called ARDI, the Anti-Racism, Diversity, and Inclusion Initiative. And that's something that is happening to put an equity lens on all of our LA County government operations. But we also must ensure adequate resources for our work. We have to elevate it to the level it deserves. And we need to realize that it's not about just reacting to the fact that there are forces that are shaping our understanding or misunderstanding of the world, the internet, and those who dominate it. Recognize that it can be a weapon of mass distraction and mass delusion. We cannot let the drive for profit of Facebook, Instagram, and others to get our communities angry, to stay on longer, to simply expose them to more ads, in essence, furthering conflict and ignorance in our world. We have to tackle the fact that there is a universal right to healthcare that has been exposed, the inequities of which have been exposed by the pandemic. The environmental degradation and changes that we're seeing, not just global warming and climate change, but basics such as clean drinking water and clean air should not be a commodity reserved for the wealthy. Of course, what's key is education. Critical race theory is a big part of that. We need one that is an inclusive history of who we are and where we need to go. And in the end, really, it comes down to all of us, to you, the role of state and local governments, not just crafting the new human rights agenda, but implementing it. So we look forward to our time together over the next few days, learning together to make that agenda a reality. So with that, let me turn it over to our conference chair, the incomparable Let's Rock and Roll, Jim Stowe. Jim's not only the head of the Montgomery County, Maryland's Human Relations Commission and former IAOHRA president. He is someone who's going to give us a preview of our conference agenda. Jim.
Thank you, Mr. President, and to all of our members of the International Association of Official Human Rights Agencies. Welcome. We're glad to see you. I'm glad to have you here. We look forward to seeing you in person real soon. And so we are excited about the potential of that. So again, welcome everyone. We're excited about this upcoming conference, and we are delighted that you've chosen to be part of it by way of your participation. I want to, first of all, just thank all those who are on our planning committee, and I'm going to very, very quickly go through their names because it's so important that we know their names. Again, Dr. Lisa Warren, who was our first vice president, by the way, thank you so much, Doc, for all you have done. Jean Kelleher is our former immediate past president, I should say, of the organization. She's the director there for the Alexandria Office of Human Rights. Angela Rush is the Assistant Diversity and Inclusion Director for Fort Worth Human Relations Commission. Carol Johnson is with the newly formed Director of the Civil Rights and Civil Rights Office of the City of Austin, Texas. Thank you so much, Carol. Ken Gunn has stepped up to be our secretary. Ken, thank you so much for what you do. First Deputy Commissioner, Chicago Commission on Human Relations. Tammy Dixon Tatum, department head for the Human Relations Commission there in Anderson, Indiana. Gwendolyn Wiggins, human rights official for the city of Orlando, Human Relations Office. Diane Clements Board stepped up in a big way. Diane, thank you. Executive Director of the Evansville, Vandenberg County Human Relations Commission, and Jeffrey Lorick, also with the director, I should say, of the Human Rights Department of Pinellas County, Office of Human Rights. Thank you so much again, Jeffrey. And we have a couple other folks who also are just really, really helpful for us and to us. Kyla Hannington is with the Prince George's County Human Rights Commission. Paul Booth is the director for the City of Cincinnati's Human Relations Commission. Cleveland Horton is deputy director of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, and Ramona Brown Carter is with the Baltimore County Human Rights Commission. And the person to whom we leave all this to, and this has helped us time and time again, of course, is our illustrious President Robin Toma. Thank you so much for all your leadership. And then Lisa Sims. Folks, if you don't know who Lisa Sims is, she is our administrator for the International Association of Official Human Rights Agencies, and does an extremely important job for us and always comes through for us. So again, let's give them a electronic round of applause for all of our folks who helped with this planning of this event. So thank you one, thank you all for that. On our agenda, I hope you have it in front of you or if you got it nearby. The conference is set up to talk about the issue of hope and how we go forward, even amidst these enormous challenges that we have in our field of work. And our speakers have all come forward to share with you that hope, to share with you that opportunity to move in a different kind of way, even in the midst of these challenges that we face. So coming up next will be sort of a kickoff for the conference, sort of a theme set, if you will. You've already heard about a number of folks who have served and so ably over the years, but you're going to hear from, again, Dr. James Lawson, who is going to share with us a perspective that is just going to blow you away, and one of our icons from the civil rights movement. We're so pleased to have the chair of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. I've not met her yet, so I'm looking forward to Madam Chair, to hear your comments and to be led by your vision of what's going to happen yet. And we've got a series of folks coming in from around the country that are going to be with us as well to end up giving their national flavor. And so we're looking forward to our president to introduce them properly coming up on our next segment. We'll have a break, and then we'll come back with Dr. Lisa Warren. We'll be able to moderate a session with Dr. Andre M. Perry on the worthy of investment, restoring value to Black communities, an exciting session that I know you want to be a part of. So please stay tuned as we go through the agenda. And then you've heard so much about it, folks, unpacking the critical race theory. My goodness gracious. Listen, you're going to hear today some folks who are on the cutting edge rather of this particular issue. You're going to find out what it is, and you're going to find out what it is not. And so it's a very important conversation. We've got then some great folks heading up that particular workshop and segment with Dr. Kamara Jones and also Dr. Justin Coles. And of course, our own Diane Clements Boyd will lead us through that session. And then we've got something very important, and I'm excited about this particular segment because it really gets into our work in a very deep kind of way. The anatomy of a community in crises, a tale of the Twin Cities and George Floyd. We are very excited about having these folks come to us from the Twin Cities in Minnesota to kind of talk about how their city dealt with this whole issue of crises, and more importantly, what led up to it, what happened during the course of the crisis at its height, and then looking at beyond the crises, what communities can do. So please tune into that. We've got some folks coming in to kind of talk about that issue. One of our former colleagues, Tyrone Terrell, who's with the St. Paul, Minneapolis Commission on Human Rights, sort of leading that whole piece with us. And I'm excited about what he's going to share with us along with his other colleagues, from the Twin Cities area. So a very exciting segment. That will round out our day. We'll be having then a bit of a workshop and a networking piece that Robin will take us through and sort of get to know one another a little bit. And so we'll have a chance then to do a little bit of that as we end our day at 4:50 in the afternoon. So you see, we got a full day set for you right now. I know we're starting a little bit later than we normally would start because we want to make really sure that our folks on the West Coast could actually join without getting up at dawn And so that's the reason we're starting a little bit later in our day. And so we're hopeful that that has, again, satisfied and accommodated some folks there. Tomorrow morning is important because we have our regional meetings. All of us who are members of the association will find ourselves in a region, either the West, the South, or the Atlantic, or the Midwest. And we'll have folks who will be able to guide you through that process. Diane Clements Boards is our Midwest regional representative. We have Jeffrey Lorick, who is our South regional representative. I happen to be the person heading up the Atlantic region, and we'll be looking forward to electing somebody that might head up our Western region as a new representative. But tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, we'll have our regional meetings. We've got a lot of good information to share with all of you, so please stay tuned to that. We want to make sure you get all the information that's going on, because we've not been able to see one another. We need to communicate and find out ways that we can serve you better. And that's going to be our real focus for those meetings tomorrow morning. And then our opening session. We're very excited to have our federal partners join us again. Thank you, EEOC. Thank you, HUD. And thank you, National Fair Housing Alliance, for stepping up and sharing this moment with us. And so we look forward to having those folks join us. We have, of course, Chair Charlotte Burrows with EEOC. We got Demetria McCain, our Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity, and our own good friend, Lisa Rice, President and CEO of the National Fair Housing Alliance. These are the top people in those fields, folks, that can give us benefit of the thoughts, their vision, and more importantly, or as importantly, I should probably say, cutting edge things that are happening in their various areas of expertise. So we look forward to that, one and all. And then we've got a series of concurrent workshops that will start in the afternoon. First one, a very important workshop, and one for which needs our attention, is called Trans Stories and Trans Lives. A very important topic that many of us are facing in our communities, where members of our transgender community are facing enormous challenges out there. And we know more about what we can do to be an advocate for that part of our community as well. So a very, very important panel coming up. Ken Gunn will be moderating that session for us. And so we look forward for those of you who will be attending that session. Session number 2 looks at the issue of redlining and the whole issue around environmental issues. And you recall what happened in Flint, Michigan, and maybe other places involving water safety and how that impacted minority and poor communities. And so we've got a great discussion about that coming up. Professor Martha Davis will carry us through that particular dialogue and conversation from Northeastern University Law School. I look forward to hearing those folks talk about that issue. And then we have something very interesting happening as well in the afternoon, another plenary session. We'll be looking at advancing legislation to address discriminatory practices, how we are facing some of the issues of voting rights, as an example, and the restricted kinds of activities that are going on all across this country, looking at issues of domestic terrorism, what that might mean for our communities as well. And then also this idea about how we look at the issue of really reinventing law enforcement. What does that mean? And so we've got a series of folks that come and kind of talk about that, heading that up. Of course, Leon Russell will be with us, one of our former directors of a agency, Pinellas County, as it turns out, who will be joining us on that panel. He currently is the national chair of the NAACP. Look forward to having him be a part of that process. We've invited also to this conversation Representative Jamie Raskin of Maryland to come and share with us as well, and also Representative Robin Kelly. And we've also invited back one of our own, again, Beverly Watts with the State of Tennessee Human Rights Commission will be part of that panel as well. And so we look forward then to a very good and rich discussion on these issues as they go forward. We will then move forward with an issue that many of us are getting involved with, and that is the issue of racial equity. Many of you have been called to either be a part of that program. Some of you have actually been called to actually head up that program in your various agencies across the country. Well, we've got the guru. He's going to be with us this actually tomorrow afternoon. Julie Nelson came to us, used to be with the city of Seattle. And Julie talked about this concept back in 2006, folks. And so she's been on the cutting edge of this, along with the city of Seattle and King County very early on, and will come to us with some examples of what's happening in the agencies and organizations that have already undertaken this particular effort within, again, the issue of racial equity, and share with us ideas about those of us who maybe are just entering into this particular issue for our communities. And so a very, very timely, very, very important segment coming up as one of our concurrent workshops in the late afternoon. And we'll finish up then with a discussion that will look at this issue of global human rights systems that can increase authority and resources for human rights commissions to advance justice on race, gender, and other equities. Again, bringing in our whole international flavor of our organization, because we're finding how very, very small our world is, and that issues that face countries across the world end up coming to our own communities as well. And so our own member, by the way, we're excited to have her as part of our own family now, Joanne Ward, joining us now from the New York City Commission on Human Rights, will be heading up that particular panel as well. So folks, we've got a full agenda. We're going to be very excited about, again, being a part of this process. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get into it right now. No more delays. Let's get into our conference. Thank you all for joining us. And so, Mr. President, it's back over to you, but I have to add this one comment, and this is the one coming from Abraham Lincoln. What about this one? We are not bound to always win, but we are bound to be true. We're not always bound to succeed, but we are bound to lend the best light that we have. We must be willing to stand with anyone who stands for what is right. But we also must be willing to part from them when they stand for what is wrong. Mr. President, let's rock and roll.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.